Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the formal presentations for this evening. I'd now like to invite the four speakers to join me on stage. And we'll go through a little bit of Q&A so that we can ask the audience to either ask questions or perhaps to offer some views, perhaps some countervailing views of research that they may have done themselves. So I think we should have microphones here. So I'll. If people would like to raise their hands to indicate if they'd like to ask a question, then I'll nominate and then pass to whichever speaker you'd like to address your questions to. We'll start with you, Dave.
Yeah. Were they using light signal at this stage, or was it just flag signal and radio?
They were using light signals, and generally you try to use light and signal flags together to back up the signals. And radio was, the British were not keen on using radio but knew they had to. Basically what you see during the war is a steady introduction of low power, smaller radios to allow short range communications. And that gets accelerated by the concentration fire program.
Yes, Bob. Can you wait for the microphone, please, so we can record the question?
Thanks. This is basically Dorothy Dixon, to our artillery officer. In your presentation, you gave the impression that it wasn't the increase in the number of guns and volume of ammunition that was available that made the difference, that it was the development of the intellectual property, the command and control systems, the observation, the targeting, etc. But I would think you would agree that it was actually a combination of both that was decisive. But you might like to develop that a bit.
Just check. Yeah, this works. Yeah, obviously having more guns is beneficial, and it really just feeds. The more guns they got, obviously starting with the 250, there was less control that they need, and the more guns, the more command and control that is needed. However, just having the extra guns would not have given the benefits that the command and control and the centralisation of that firepower allowed them to achieve. One of the key things was obviously the increase in the medium and heavy artillery pieces by comparison to the German artillery pieces. But I'd say that from the 250 guns to the 1,400 guns, that increase between the 1914 to 1915, there wasn't really any extra capability that they achieved from that extra 1,000 odd guns that they got. So whilst I do concede that obviously more guns is always better, that's an artilleryman view forever. However, I think that view that it is just the guns, or just the guns, if they did have 6,500 guns at the end and not the command and control, they certainly wouldn't have been as effective in my opinion.
Darryl Nigel Webster. I was interested in your presentation when you talked about them taking Lewis guns order, because I have seen a picture, I think the 67th Battery Royal Artillery in 1918 during the German offensive. The battery commander, characteristically outraged by the Germans' temerity, is firing a Lewis gun into advancing German stormtroops. I just wondered when gunners as such got Lewis guns as a means of, aircraft defence or self-defence.
Yeah, they had those really from the start, and mainly for that anti-aircraft defence. They would mount them on wagon wheels with the axle in, and then use those as traverse. But they could be dismounted, and I think that was one of the things they'd have to have a look at, of taking that forward, because the infantry was all engaged in the attack. So when the gun was out there, it was really on its own, forward of the infantry. But it was the best weapon of the type, to provide ground defence and at that stage air defence.
Yeah, just
Thank you.
on that, the airmen preferred the Lewis gun as well. They could put 2 or 3 magazines into the round-shaped magazines. They could clamp them to the side of the cockpit. Meant that when you were being attacked and if you ran out of ammunition, you could flick out one and put the other one straight on very quickly. And also, the Lewis gun was ideal for shooting down balloons because they started to use a cartridge called a Buckingham, which had a metal case, but it had a small nitroglycerin charge in it and a phosphorus bead. And what they found was they could shoot a normal round through a balloon, but it wouldn't set fire to hydrogen. And then they figured they needed to get fire into it, so they tried with phosphorus. Put one cycling into the balloon bag, no oxygen inside, so they had to have the 3. They had to have penetration with explosion, let the oxygen in, and then the fire started. And the Lewis gun was preferred in terms of shooting down balloons like that.
Just an aside on that, the German stormtroops from 1917 through, it made extensive use of rechambered Lewis guns, so it was a very popular gun.
Any other questions? Yes, up the back.
I'll shout it out. What's the recording? Admiral Goldrick, sir, just a quick radio check. My question is about Jutland, obviously one of the most decisive naval battles in history. What did it change, if anything, strategically?
It really confirmed, it helped confirm, in fact, the August 1916 encounter, because of the difficulty of achieving results with submarines, confirmed Admiral Scheer's view that unrestricted submarine warfare was the best way to go, and made him redouble his efforts in the politicking that was going on between the Navy, the Great General Staff, and the Chancellor, and the civil machinery government, and the Kaiser, to enforce, to get a return to unrestricted warfare, because that was viewed as being the only decisive way the Germans could break the deadlock and basically cut the Allies' access to global resources. So the fact that it confirmed the state, I quoted elsewhere the American journalist who said the German fleet has assaulted its jailer, but it's still in jail. There was really a cumulative realisation at Jutland and then in August that it wasn't going to work that way.
Good evening, gentlemen. Major Philip Blowers, about to go to France for the British Army Staff Ride 2016. With war, particularly this first war, and war as against a first-class peer enemy, what are your considerations with regards to principles that the Germans designed their defences at the Somme, particularly around the Thiepval and Pozières, and how successful, or was it a failure for the Allied troops? And linked to that, what can we learn today from combat in defending or attacking important pieces of terrain against a first-class, well-equipped and well-resourced enemy?
Looking at the defences that the Germans had, and as I mentioned, that they had adequate time to prepare. They were the masters of defence. When they positioned their pillboxes, and as I mentioned about reclaiming the houses were built for the best climatic conditions on the Somme, so big open areas, and where the houses were usually on the tops of ridgelines or on the forward slopes. So they were naturally built on the best defensive lines. So that's why they adopted that. The ability to take out a pillbox with indirect artillery fire would cost significant amounts of rounds, and the higher the calibre, the better off it's going to be. But the fact was that when they were hitting it, you might get one hit in 20. So that's where they were looking at this direct fire come up and keep neutralising that to allow the infantry to advance under it was going to be instrumental in providing that less rounds, better targeting, hit it and keep hitting it until the infantry got there, because then they would go through what they called their rat hunt. They would go down into the toolbox and then start to engage those that were sheltering in the bottom.
Gentlemen, just looking at the Western Front at the moment, I'm thinking slightly away from that to the forgotten area. Can you comment on the role of artillery in the Mesopotamian or the Middle East campaign, where the Australian forces were much more mobile, the campaign had a different context to the straight defensive context that was the Western Front?
The Light Horse had British artillery and Indian artillery in support, and they adopted the same thing. They could keep up with the Light Horse, especially at Beersheba. They were pinpointed targets again, firing onto the base of the mosque at Beersheba, firing from the support lines that the 12th and the 4th Light Horse regiments attacked. So they were just as good. A lot of Scottish artillery was there, and they were absolutely firing pinpoint direct fire onto those targets. So they were pretty good. Mesopotamia were a little bit different. There was artillery there, but it was more of a fluid war that they didn't engage in. It was almost like peacekeeping in a way, and advising. But when they were there, they were actually pretty good.
Yeah, Mesopotamia campaign is very different to the Palestine and Egyptian front. Mesopotamia essentially was a river war, and consequently it was very difficult to bring the artillery up quickly. When Townsend left Basra and headed towards Baghdad, beyond his orders, he got caught out at a place called Kut al-Amara, which is on a bend in the river, and he went into a siege position, and he was calling desperately for artillery because the Turks were surrounding him across the river, so he couldn't make a breakout. That was one of the big failures of his campaign, because he didn't wait before he had time to bring up his guns, because they were definitely in the theatre, and had he done so, it might have changed the whole outcome. But as you know, by April 16, they all 30,000 went into a prisoner of war camp in atrocious conditions. So yeah.
You'll be pleased to know that one of the seminars for next year will actually be addressing one of some of the exports of our artillery during the Palestine campaign. So hopefully we'll address that answer in more full detail next year. I think perhaps with that last question, I might just sort of round up now. And in a moment I'll ask our head of regiment, Brigadier Furini, to provide some of his views and observations. But for myself, I think one of the things that I find most interesting as I hear this is 100 years later we're encountering a similar quandary. We are facing with the Australian Defence Force a situation of declining relative superiority in technology. We are encountering a circumstance where we don't have superiority in numbers or in firepower, and our ability to resupply and to generate mass at the strategic level is not necessarily a certainty. These are some of the things that we're encountering in the British Expeditionary Force and the Allies more broadly, and the Australians in particular, back in 1916. And yet, 100 years later, we find ourselves in very, very similar set of circumstances. Today, we are advocating an approach which looks at an indirect approach, looking at a manoeuvrist approach to warfare, capitalising on our strengths and exploiting the enemy's weaknesses. I think what we've heard this evening is exactly that 100 years earlier. We've seen how, even with the early advent of indirect fire, the limitations of that indirect fire have been found wanting. And so, Third Hill Enemy's Detachment, this section, have actually reverted back and employed direct fire in a set of circumstances that it actually will be advantageous to use that other approach, and yet they are using it from a flanking position. So with Trevor and his recount of what was happening with the British Expeditionary Forces and the Royal Artillery, we see here a range of different opportunities of exploiting an indirect fire, the masses of indirect fire. But we recognise here that there is a challenge to the decentralisation of command, the decentralisation of command and the decentralisation of control, which is allowing fragmentation of our approaches to command. We now look at a centralisation of command and a decentralisation of control, which allows for a continuity, control and discipline where required, but decentralisation which allows for the application of fire as best we can do. Mark took us through the advent of bringing that aviation and observation together so that we can again start to look at ways in which we can view our adversary from another vantage point, identify their weaknesses, identify their vulnerabilities, and ensure that we can bring our fire to bear with the best effect. And finally, James has taken us through the challenges that we're facing the High Seas Fleet and the Grand Fleet at the outset of, in fact, 2 years in to the world's most destructive war, and the ways in which both of the fleet commanders were wrestling with ways to come up with tactics, techniques and procedures and indeed strategies to avoid the weaknesses of the fleets and to look at ways of outfoxing and outmaneuvering, whether it be through the use of mass torpedo attacks, which would circumvent the use of the capital ships, whether it would be through the utilisation and the development of submarines as a means of, again, using another cross-domain attack. And then finally, of course, bringing war in the air to war in the air above the sea, and what was being developed both by the British Navy at the time, but also with others in close pursuit. So those are some of the things that I think I took away from today. And I think it was a very, very useful rendition from all 4 speakers, and I think that before I conclude completely, I think Brigadier Furini to the front, please.
G'day, fellow gunners and friends of gunners, because you're all obviously friends of gunners being here tonight. Nick has done a great job summing up, and I'll hit on a couple of points in a minute, but firstly I'd like to thank our speakers tonight for coming along, for sharing your insights with us. It was greatly appreciated. But I would like to call out Trevor Watson particularly. He introduced himself as the youngest fellow presenting tonight, and as head of Regiment, the professional head of the RAA, it pleases me immensely to see a young officer taking the time to learn about his history and apply that in a relevant way to the future. And I certainly want to encourage more junior gunner officers and junior soldiers to engage in the history of our great organisation. I'd like to thank Evos for coming along tonight and opening it and being part of it, and also Commodore Adfa for letting us use his great facility. Nick and Jim, once again, a great seminar. I'm looking forward to the next one next year. It's a pity we have to wait so long. I'm anxious to hear it, but no, another great effort tonight, so thank you. Look, Nick summarised a whole bunch of things very, very effectively at the end. What it came down to for me tonight was, it sort of links back to what the Air Vice Marshal said at the outset, joint force design, where do we go from the future? Admiring the past is great, but actually taking the lessons and applying them to the future is fundamental. And I think there are a whole bunch of relevant lessons from today that are things we have either forgotten and things that we could certainly reapply. I think the reason we've forgotten a number of things is, a number of years fighting insurgency wars in Afghanistan and Iraq in the joint fires space, has led us to draw some of the wrong conclusions about the application of fire. The fact that we went to Afghanistan without our own organic guns in support was fundamentally flawed from the outset. We have a cadre of junior officers who think that joint fires is all about applying a couple of mortar tubes to a target and having a fast jet on call in an uncontested airspace. So there was some commentary earlier tonight about a peer-on-peer engagement. The thing that worries me is how do we apply joint fires in a near peer against a capable and credible enemy? In a place where we won't have air superiority, where there will be counter-battery fire. How do we apply the fires in that particular environment? So there's some great lessons in there, things about centralised command, decentralised control. I'm pleased recently that General McLaughlin has reinstituted the Divisional Joint Fires and Effects Coordination Centre inside the 1st Division headquarters. That is the first step along the way to re-enabling the joint fight. Pleasingly, from an RAA perspective, that will be headed by an RAA colonel next year. So, where we are now, currently the senior gunner, in our permanent position is currently the COs. With me doing head of regiment as an extra regimental appointment, we will have a full-time gunner officer in a gunner appointment next year, which is fantastic at the colonel level. So there is a bunch of lessons there. The key ones are about adaptation and learning, and it's not just about technology, it's about procedures and policy that sit behind the use of that technology. But perhaps most importantly, it was about the people, about command environments, about command freedom, about exercising mission command, about allowing people to have the initiative, and about planning and preparation in order to execute the mission. So I think that's where we need to make sure in our journey to the Joint Force Design of the future, we don't forget that it's actually about the intellect and capability of our people to apply the technologies that we're introducing. Otherwise, more digitalisation, more precision, it amounts to nothing. While I have your attention at this particular juncture, I'll just give you a quick update on the RAA. As the head of regiment, the liaison letter has been published and should be in your inboxes if you are a subscriber to the liaison letter. But since we last met in this forum, I managed to travel to the UK for the 300th anniversary of the Royal Artillery. I was fortunate enough to have some funding from the Victorian branch of the RSL to be able to fund a young gunner to attend with me and rebuild those bridges that we've had in the past with the Royal Artillery. And if you want my biased opinion, we have more in common with the Royal Artillery than we have with the US Field Artillery, and we need to get back to educating our people at Lark Hill rather than at Fort Sill. Just last week we had the 50th anniversary of the Battle of Long Tan, and I was pleased to be able to be involved in arranging for 103 field battery, 105 field battery, and 161 field batteries to all provide detachments to the saluting battery, and also the US Field Artillery out of 25 ID provided the 4th saluting battery, representing the 4 batteries that fired in direct support to the battle. And I think that was important to recognise the fact that the artillery played a very, very significant role in that particular battle. We recently had the RFC graduation, and pleased to improve the quality of the RAA prize that is awarded there. We now have a perpetual trophy, a bit of repurposed mess silverware, a very large rose bowl, which has been inscribed with the names of all the RAA officers who have won that prize since the modern RMC came into existence. So that's important. And then later this year at the Corps Conference, I will be announcing the first winners of the Champion Bombardier and Champion Gunner Awards from across the regiment. It's an important part of building and rebuilding our identity. That leads me to the final point. All of these things cost money. So if you're a member of the RAA, please put your hand in your pocket and subscribe to the fund. If you just like the RAA, I'd also encourage you to put your hand in your pocket and subscribe to the fund. It's about building the identity of the gunners, and it's about preserving our history and building a bridge between it to the present and into the future. So thank you.